The Alabama Crimson Tide are in the Final Four, and who else awaits but the UCONN Huskies? The 1 seed as a spot in the national championship is on the line. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. We are here to break down and preview everything that is the Final Four in Glendale, Arizona. Guys, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon as well, so you get notifications of when we go live and when we drop new video content, which is each and every single day. Also, guys, check out the podcast, which drops daily: iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can also find us on social media: X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your content. And, of course, guys, stay up to date with the latest from us at our website, SECUnfiltered.com. Before we get going, guys, I want to tell you about our friends over at RHOBACK, because today's segment brought to you by our friends at RHOBACK. Guys, head over to RHOBACK.com. Use the promo code SECU at checkout to get 20% off your entire first purchase. Guys, whatever you need: polos, quarter zips, hoodies. Of course, the weather's warming up. It's spring game season. It's tailgate season. It's baseball season. Or whether you're just hanging out around the house, whatever it is, guys, RHOBACK is the way to go. And they've got their brand new Azalea collection, right, for Masters Week. Perfect timing. Guys, this stuff is incredible. I've never been so hyped to get a piece of clothing in the mail like I am as I'm awaiting right now on my Azalea polo. So again, go check them out, RHOBACK.com, promo code SECU at checkout to get 20% off your first purchase. Speaking of someone who would look great in an Azalea polo, my good friend Dave Shumate. He joins the show as always. Dave, what's going on, my man? Appreciate you taking the time.
Man, just fired up for this Final Four in Phoenix. I wish I could go, but I have some family stuff coming up, so I will be at the house watching it. May sneak over there, maybe, if Alabama were to win Saturday night, advance to Monday. But it sounds like a total David defeating Goliath here at this point, according to the point spread and listening to other people out there. Really, it sounds like people are already looking forward a little bit to the Purdue UConn matchup on Monday. I was listening to some sports podcast or college basketball podcast the other day, Chris, and the first segment they talked about was, is this UConn team a top 5 basketball team of all time? I was like, man, they're giving these guys – again, I've said it all year. I think in a series, I don't think anybody would beat them in a best of 7 series. One game, though, we've seen it with Kentucky's, 14, 15 team losing in the Final Four. You just never know. You never know. I like Alabama's – I think Alabama – they played last year. Alabama obviously had the better team last year. But, this team went to the Final Four. But overall, I think last year's team was better. But I think there's some opportunities if Alabama's playing well, and they obviously have to play well, for them to have this game in a tight one, a single-possession game, maybe at the under 4-minute timeout.
And, Dave, you mentioned this game taking place in Glendale, Arizona, State Farm Stadium on Saturday night at 8:49 p.m. Eastern Time. Tip-off on TBS. That's where you can catch the game. And you mentioned, man, the spread in this one. I was stunned when I saw it. And again, give credit to UConn. They're a fantastic team. But Alabama finds themselves as an 11.5-point underdog. In case you're feeling frisky, you think Bama's going to win, you can get Bama on the money line at plus 550. So you bet $100 on Bama and they win. You cash out $550. The over-under in this one set at 161.5. Dave, before we go any further breaking down the game, let's talk about how these two teams got here, who they've beaten. You start with UConn. They beat the 16 seed Stetson in their first round game. Then in the round of 32, took down Northwestern, took down San Diego State in the Sweet 16, then beat Illinois in the Elite 8 to get to the Final Four. And you look at the scores, Dave, they haven't been particularly close. I think their closest margin of victory was that game against Northwestern, which was a 17-point margin of victory. I think that is the closest game. Yeah, they beat Illinois by 25 in the Elite 8 round to advance to the Final Four. So UConn, it's been pretty smooth sailing to this point. You look at Alabama, they took down Charleston in the first round, then beat Grand Canyon, then took down North Carolina in that epic Sweet 16 game, and then beat the Clemson Tigers in a fun back-and-forth one in the Elite 8 to get to this point. So, Dave, let's go back to UConn. I mentioned they have blown out everyone. When you look at this team, what are your biggest takeaways and what you've seen from them in the tournament thus far?
Chris, you mentioned it. Even going back to last year's tournament, they've now won 10 straight, tournament games by double digits or more, and they've been up in this specific tournament 30 plus or more on everybody. The 30-0 run against Illinois the other night was a 5-point game at halftime. and then the 30-0 run to kick off the second half. I mean, you wouldn't even see that in a high school game. A 30-0 run against quality competition in an Elite Eight game.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable. I mean, they got 5 guys. We have Tristan Newton. Obviously, people know Donovan Clingan. Stephon Castle, lockdown defender for him. He's done a phenomenal job against the opposing team's best players throughout this tournament. For UConn, Cam Spencer, Alex Caravan, and then a guy some SEC fans, A&M fans specifically will be familiar with. Their transfer Hassan Diarra coming up, stepping up for him. He's a guy. So they have guys that could be someone different every night. Not necessarily like Alabama has Mark Sears where you're consistently expecting 20-plus points each night like he's been. I mean, maybe had the best singles season in Alabama basketball history, just his consistency. But from a UConn standpoint, it's just been like a total boa constrictor of just pure dominance. I mean, even going back to last year, this team really has not been challenged in the NCAA tournament in over 2 years. It seems like such a dominant 2-year run, and it's crazy to think about because they were a 4 seed last year. But I feel like a lot of people like them as the favorite because they got a little bit of a hiccup in middle of Big East play. But again, just so many ways to beat you. They can play up tempo. They can slow it down. They can make you defend for 22 to 24 seconds in the shot clock. They can beat you in numerous different ways. I mean, they can run you off the perimeter when you want to shoot threes. They got a rim protector in Klingon. Just a complete team, like I said at the beginning of the show. If we're playing a series, best out of 5, best out of 7, whatever it is, UConn wouldn't lose a series to anybody. They wouldn't. But we're not playing a series. We're playing the greatest tournament of all time, the NCAA tournament. One game, I do see some matchup advantages for Alabama. Again, they got to be playing well. But this UConn team, man, it is going to be – it truly does feel like it's a little bit, especially with the semifinal game, it's a little bit like the USSR versus the United States in hockey in 1980 a little bit. It's the semifinals before the gold matchup. Kind of feels like Alabama's the hockey team, the U.S. hockey team with some of the college players playing these professionals. I know they're both college players here, but it kind of has that feel people talk about, is this the greatest team, top 5 greatest team all the time? They still got 2 games to win, single elimination. But again, this is one of the best teams we've had in college basketball in the last 5 years by far.
And we should mention, too, like you said, UConn going for back-to-back national championships. I thought their head coach had some interesting comments, Dave, I want to get your thoughts on earlier in the week when he basically said, if we were a Duke or Kentucky or whoever it might be, we'd be leading Sports Center, but we're just kind of this team from Storrs, Connecticut. Your thoughts on, it feels like he's almost trying to play the disrespect card going into this game because, like you mentioned, they're a double-digit favorite. Good luck finding anyone who's going to be picking Alabama to win. What do you make of his comments? Does he have a valid point, or do you view it as he's trying to fuel his team and play the disrespect card, even though it may not be there?
Well, I mean, I think Dan Hurley's one of the best coaches, top 3 coaching college basketball now, especially if they win it this year. I mean, the first back-to-back champ since 05, 06, 07, 06, 07 Florida with Joakim Noah and then Billy Donovan and all them. So I think he's a top 3 guy in the sport. I think he's trying to find ways to keep his team motivated. I mean, they've been on such a dominant run in the NCAA tournament. I think he's a little bit like, dude, I mean, our guys are on social media. They pay attention to this, whether they believe it. He has an older, mature team. But all week, when they're flying to Phoenix, when they get there, I saw they're getting there today on Tuesday, they're going to be hearing it for 4 straight days about, man, what would it mean to go back-to-back? What would it mean to go back-to-back? I mean, y'all are probably a top 5 greatest team of all time if you go back-to-back. So I think he makes – I saw a quote with him. You brought up a quote with him. I saw he was talking to somebody. He's like, I've even had to make up, like, head coaches quotes to my team, stuff that the opposing head coach doesn't even say, but I have to go say that to my team because he's like, I know they don't go listen to the opposing team's coach's press conference unless the guy said something viral. But he's like, I had to go make up stuff to get my team a little bit like how Michael Jordan would say. He would make up crap in his head to keep him motivated. So Dana Hurley's had to do that. Just a phenomenal coaching staff. I mean, it's funny, Nate Oates and Alabama assistant Preston Murphy both have great relationships with the Hurley family, working with them both. So there's a lot of familiarity there, Both teams have 4 or 5 days to prepare. Again, I like that for Alabama a little bit, and I like that for UConn. I mean, both teams are tough preparations, I think, when you just have a day to do it. But UConn, I mean, yeah, there's no denying. It's a dominant run. The best team, even if Alabama were to beat UConn, I would still say from top to bottom this year, UConn was the best team. They are the best team. Again, they would not lose in a series to anybody. But one game, But man, I get why Dan Hurley does it, though. I do get it because you got to find some ways. I mean, Nick Saban was a master motivator. You got to find some ways when you're great, like, hey, how do I keep my team's edge? How do I keep my team's edge where they're not going to go around 7:49, 8:49 Eastern on Saturday night, walk in to Glendale, the arena, and sit there and be, what is it, the State Farm Arena? You said it a minute ago. Walk in there and not have that edge that we're going to have if we want to go complete the mission and go back-to-back.
Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, Aaron Estrada. It seems like, Dave, there's been a number of different heroes in March Madness this year. I think one of the things that benefits Bama in this matchup, like you mentioned, everybody's expecting UConn to get the win. I think Bama can play loose. I think they can play with a chip on their shoulder, and a team like that is a dangerous team. What do you feel like the recipe for victory is? Not just success, but winning this ball game. The Crimson Tide get it done, advance the national title if this happens, or is it a number of things they're going to need to do to take down UConn?
Well, I went back and watched. I knew we were recording today. I went back and watched their Illinois game. I was at a wedding, so I missed the first half of that and a little bit of the second half, just towards the tail end of that 30-0 run. So I went back and watched it. Brad Underwood, Illinois' coach, didn't really get the game plan. I feel like all week, again, just go back to Dan Hurley's motivation, you had some people out there because people liked Illinois' length and athleticism. They're like, hey, I think they can hang with UConn if they get to that Elite Eight matchup. So Hurley had a little bit of that motivation to go pull that. I don't think he's going to have any of that this week. I don't think anybody's going to be picking Alabama. But to my point, Brad Underwood, they just kept attacking Donovan Clingan, hoping to get him into foul trouble. And with the way the game was being officiated, they were letting some contact play. So you were just running your head into a brick wall over and over, taking up or passing up open looks to just go try to get him in foul trouble. I think that was an awful game plan. Again, Brad Underwood, great coach. Took the line out of the Elite Eight this year, won the Big Ten tournament. But if I'm Alabama and Nate Oates, and they know this, they got a couple of days to prepare for this. They know the Hurley system. Two of the guys on staff, Nate Oates himself, has worked on staff with Dan Hurley's brother. Preston Murphy himself has worked with Dan Hurley. So they're familiar. They played last year in that in the Phil Knight Invitational in Thanksgiving. They played in the semifinal game. But if I'm Alabama, you got to get Klingon offensively. You got to get Klingon on the perimeter, either covering Grant Nelson, Jaron Stevenson, who had a big game for him, the freshman on Saturday against Clemson, going for 19 points. One of those guys has to be making shots. And first of all, Alabama's got to be making shots. I know you won't really know if that's going to happen. You can feel as good as you want to walk around, shoot around, or walk through, shoot around. Till they're there that night, they have to shoot. I said non-negotiable. If they shoot like they did against Grand Canyon, they're not going to win. They're going to have to – I see some people like, do they need 20-plus threes? I don't know if I go that far. Granted, Alabama made 19 threes this year against Purdue in a loss in the regular season. So they've proven if they make 19, 20 threes, they can lose because I think the defense is what it is a little bit. But offensively, if they can get Klingon out guarding the perimeter, that opens up penetrators. Alabama likes to get to the rim, layups, or if it's not their kick out, that opens that. So I think that's key. Grant Nelson, Jaron Stevenson at the 5 spot, guarding Klingon, giving up some weight, but offensively, they're going to have to try to extend him out. They start making threes again, that's going to open up some slashing lanes. I like Alabama at that point. Defensively, they got 5 guys who can all beat you. Personally, Bama doesn't play zone. Nate Oates doesn't like it. I think they did it against Missouri 2 years ago and got lit up, and Nate Oates hasn't ever done anything since. I liked what they did against North Carolina early in that game. You can tell they went by the scouting report. Those guys were knocking shots down for him now. Trimble, and I forget what the other kid's name, the true freshman guard for him, who were percentage-wise terrible shooters going into that game. They were making them early. Bama didn't abandon ship with the game plan. The numbers went back to the average. I would maybe factor in a little zone here. And UConn can shoot. They can. But I think that's the weakness of the offense. If I'm Nate Oates, Klingon's not beating me. We're going to rebound. And if UConn beats me from 3, so be it. So if the game plan for Alabama is, I think you got to start what they have been doing. Grant Nelson at the 5 spot. Maybe bring in Jaron Stevenson. Get Klingon to come guard them because I think they're more athleticism. They can take him off the dribble. Again, if they're making some threes, he's going to have to go get in their face. Opens up slashing lanes. And then defensively, he's not killing me. You're not going to beat me on the inside at a position in the front court that Alabama in the tournament, I honestly hadn't struggled in. But for most of the year they have. I'm going to take my chances with UConn shooting threes. I mean, they may kill me. They may be 16 for 30. But I feel like that gives you the best opportunity to go win this specific basketball game. So they're going to have to shoot well. They're going to have to defend well down there on the post, limit the turnovers. But one game, Alabama, we've seen it. They put up 19 threes against quality competition before, granted in a close loss to Purdue. They can go off from 3. Will they? I don't know, but they can. So if I'm Dan Hurley, I'm not necessarily just already starting to prepare for Purdue or NC State because I know if Alabama's hot, anything's possible.
And we've seen Bama get hot all throughout this season. You mentioned three-pointers, Dave. UConn, 72nd in the country with 8.5 three-pointers made per game. Alabama, they are second in the country, 11.2. And you mentioned that matchup, the Alabama offense against the UConn defense. Bama number 1 in all of college basketball, 90.6 points per game. UConn, 9th in points allowed per game at just 63.3. So something's got to give in this game. Dave, let's lock in some predictions. I'm going to go ahead and start. I've gone SEC heavy, admittedly, with most, if not all of my picks. There haven't been many games where I've gone against the SEC. I love this run Bama has been on. They've obviously got tons of momentum. You don't have, you're not without momentum if you get to this point. Like you mentioned, I don't think anybody would beat UConn in a series, but all it takes is one game, and Alabama's more than capable. That being said, I'm going to go with UConn. I'm going to go with UConn. Give me 86-81. I think UConn finds a way. Like you mentioned, man, they just top to bottom, they're starting 5. I mean, this is one of the best teams maybe in college basketball history. They're on a mission to make it back-to-back titles. I will not be as shocked as maybe some would be. And I'll tell you this, anybody listening, I don't think throwing some coin on Bama money line is a bad investment. I mean, for the return, fantastic value on it. That being said, UConn's a double-digit favorite for a reason. I think it'll be a great back-and-forth game. It's going to take a really, really special night, though, from Bama, and that might be asking a little bit too much, and I think Dan Hurley and company do get it done 86-81. What say you?
I'm going to go 90-84 UConn. I'm with you. I think I would take Bama in the points. I even told some of my buddies from college, like, man, it started on 11.5, it's up to 12.5. I see some places. I was like, it's a lot of points, and some people are like, no, man, it's like, I don't know, the way Alabama's playing right now, they're playing, like you said, they're going to come in there and lose. You literally are playing with house money. There's nothing to lose. No one expects you to win. I think that plays to their advantage. I do think this is going to be a game at the under 4-minute timeout. I do. I think one of these, there are 2 big lines, even the NC State Purdue line. I think, what are they getting? I just had it pulled up.
Whatever. 6.5. 9. Is it 9? It's 9.
Plus 9. They're giving the pack 9. So these are 2 big lines. Everybody's fully expecting a UConn Purdue national championship on Monday. That's fine. I mean, I get it. Probably are the 2 best teams, but in a single elimination game, I think UConn gets this done. But I do think Alabama again shoots well. I think they're going to play better than people think. I think this game's going to be much closer than people think. Give me Alabama plus the 11.5, but I do think they drop the game 90-84.
Fingers crossed for an Alabama Crimson Tide victory, Dave. I know you and I both would love nothing more than to be talking on Sunday afternoon, previewing what would be an epic national championship, no doubt. So, guys, that's going to do it all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Be sure to, again, hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon also so you get notifications of when we go live and when we drop new video content. Again, we'll have a reaction video immediately following the game on Saturday night, win, lose, or draw. Also, guys, you can check out the podcast, which drops daily. You can find us on social media across every single platform. And, of course, SECUnfiltered.com is where you can check out all of our work. For Dave Shumate, I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll catch you on the other side.